It's week number 9 of the Read What You Own challenge, and I'm standing strong. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and for the 4th year, I am participating in the Read What You Own challenge. This was originally created 4 years ago by Criminali, where he challenged himself to read 100 books that he already owned before buying another book. Many people have joined him on this challenge. I will leave a link to a video describing sort of the rules and the history of this challenge. But for this year, I am doing the modified page count challenge, where I am going to be reading 25,000 pages of books, Kindle, print, or audio, that I already own before buying a new book. The first book I finished was Babel by R.F. Kuang, 557 pages in the print edition. This is listed as a fantasy novel, and yes, it is fantasy, and it is an historical novel, and it is literary fiction, and it is sort of political fiction, all those wrapped up into one book, and quite intriguing. It starts off in the 1840s with a young boy growing up in Canton, China. He is brought to England by a professor at Oxford, and the boy is about 9 years old when this book starts off, and he's brought to England to become a protege, or say, a student of this professor, to eventually join Oxford University in their prestigious translation program. Because in this alternative world, translation can be magic. The idea that one word has another meaning in a different language can be used to form the basis of magic when combined with silver. You on one side of a bar, you translate, or you write one word in an original language, and on the other side, you write its translation, and then you can use that silver bar to do magical things. You can put that bar, let's say, in a horse cart, and if you use the right forms of words, that horse can pull a heavier load with the aid of magic. You can put similar silver bars on a sailing ship, and it can sail across the seas faster than a normal sailing ship. That sort of thing. Now, as I said, it's historical and it is fantasy. But really, what really captured my interest was the ideas behind translation. I am not fully fluent in a foreign language, but I have a smattering of Spanish and a little bit of French, so I sort of understand where Kuang is coming from. She is Chinese American, I guess. She is fluent in Chinese, and there are lots, there are bits of Chinese language in this book. Of course, I don't understand a word of Chinese, but she's very apt in guiding the reader through what one word can start off in Chinese and how it ends up in English, and all the different variations that could mean, and how that aids magic. But also, perhaps more important to this novel is its political undertones, that this is a Chinese boy, eventually becomes a Chinese young man, growing up in 19th century England, where, let's just say, people who are not Caucasian are not always appreciated fully as human beings, and it becomes quite clear that this boy is really only brought there because he has the native ability to speak Chinese. And then there are, let's say, underground organizations that are against the ruling class in England of that time. And this mixture of translation, this mixture of politics and magic made this book a huge surprise for me. I was not anticipating such a good novel when I picked this up as just a casual read. So I can highly recommend Babel. It was in my top 12 novels that I read in 2024. I can't help myself. I like Harry Flashman, the main character of the Flashman series by George MacDonald Fraser. The only problem about Flashman, and let me read from this back cover, is a rotter we see before us, a coward, a lecher, a cheat, an absolute bounder, and possibly not even a gentleman. Flashman is living in the 19th century, and he's encountering all the great events that happened in the 19th century. This one is about it starts in the 1840s, and Flashman has this remarkable resemblance to a prince of a very small fictional European country. And he has to impersonate this prince because the powers that be need that prince out of the way for a little while, and Flashman is taking his place. Now, you might see a semblance to a story called The Prisoner of Zenda by Anthony Hope, and that is not coincidental. There are lots of parallels to The Prisoner of Zenda and Royal Flash, the second in the Flashman series. But in this book, Flashman goes to a bank and he is served by a bank clerk, and that bank clerk was actually the author Anthony Hope. Now, Anthony Hope is a pen name, and in this novel it gave the real name of Anthony Hope. I don't remember what it was. So in this novel, the adventures of Flashman are actually the inspiration for the novel The Prisoner of Zenda. Now, as again I'm going to say, Flashman is a coward, he is a rake, he is a womanizer, he is a bigot, and he is absolutely hilarious. If he gets in a tough situation, his first instinct is going to be to run, and he will run with such ferocity. Everyone thinks he's a brave and gentlemanly hero. Now, there is some language in the Flashman series that modern readers may object to. It is historically accurate. It does not bother me at all, but it might raise an eyebrow to some sensitive readers. But this book is just so funny. This is not the best of the Flashman series. This is the second. The books get really good around 3, 4, and 5, and they start dropping down a little bit after that. But do pick up the Flashman series. The place to start is the first book, just called Flashman. If you like historical fiction, and George MacDonald Fraser usually does get his historical facts pretty darn close to being true, even though Flashman is a historical character, he inserts himself into all sorts of real historical events. I can read you the first sentence of this novel. If I had been the hero everyone thought I was, or even a half-decent soldier, Lee would have won the Battle of Gettysburg and probably captured Washington. That is another story. And everyone was hoping that George MacDonald Fraser would eventually tell the story of Flashman at the Battle of Gettysburg. That novel was never written, and apparently MacDonald Fraser never really intended to write it. It's just a tidbit. But the fact that a Flashman was there at supposedly at the Battle of Gettysburg is just one of the intriguing things about this series. Really, I love this series a lot. This was a reread for me. And I'm going to have to go pick up some more of this series now.
was pretty funny.
I am continuing on with my reading of Against the Day. I will be finished at the end of January. Pynchon is just a very fabulous and strange author. I've said before, I think this is a novel that was written with the help of some psychedelics or other forms of drugs, and it features some very unusual facts. There may be some time travel involved in this story. There is a character, and I believe it is in the 1910s, 1920s, somewhere around there, who comes up and says, Ich bin ein Berliner. And my German pronunciation is probably off, but if you know, that is a famous quote from a famous person done in 1963. And how did this person come up with the phrase, I am a jelly donut, and actually speak to a jelly donut? Really bizarre. I'm still liking this, even though it's a very weird book. My year-long goal of reading In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust started on the 1st of January. This is the first book. This is Swann's Way, where the narrator starts off in bed, and he's still in bed after 60 pages. But the writing in this book is magical and captivating. It is extremely detailed and vivid. He can evoke a scene unlike most other authors. This is an author, this is a book that I'm going to be reading incredibly slowly, about 12 pages a day. The only problem with that is sometimes I want to reread these pages after I finish them, because the labyrinth of words and images that Proust provides on this page are just so fascinating. It is not too late to join my Discord group if you want to join in the year-long project of reading In Search of Lost Time. I have a tentative schedule out on the Discord. You do not have to follow that schedule. You can read this book at your own pace. You can read it much quicker than 12 pages a day, or you can even read it much slower if that is your taste. But I will leave a link to the Discord channel in the description of this video. I'm still reading Jorge Luis Borges' collected fictions. I am reading a few short stories every week. He is such a magical and interesting author. The 3 short stories that I read this week were Swann's His Memory, which was 7 pages, The Shape of the Sword, which is 5 pages, and The Theme of the Traitor and the Hero, which was only 4 pages long. I will only describe the first short story, that is Swann's His Memory, and that is the story of a young boy who has a riding accident, I think it's some sort of accident where he becomes basically paralyzed and bedbound. But after that accident, he gains a perfect memory. He can remember every event in his life, down to the minutest detail, and he can sit in his bed and he can relive his previous days. And he comes up with this odd idea of math, where numbers are linked to words and word phrases. Because his memory is so profound, a simple number cannot capture what he thinks about that number. It's one of Borges's truly interesting short stories, and I'm eagerly going to be reading more short stories throughout most of the year. Okay, that is the end of week 9. I have been listening to a very long fantasy novel on audio. It's over 1,000 pages. So when I do my wrap up next week, I'm going to have a very large page count. But for this week, my totals were 1,029 pages completed, bringing my total for the project to 11,322 pages. And that, if my math is correct, brings my percentage to 45.29% of my challenge completed. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.